one of the videos that I found really interesting was the inhale, exhale. But like you were saying, you can take a lot of different, you can see it in different angles. For that video, that particular video, can you get a bit of an insight as to like the video itself, the materials that were being used?
Okay, so the salt hood is made out of salt and pantyhose, and I initially started using pantyhose because I really wanted to like replicate the skin, so it was like a bodysuit, you know, skin suits. I call them skin suits sometimes. Like I really wanted to wear the body out, and then with and I also wanted to like oppose the functionality of pantyhose. So pantyhose is like something that's supposed to keep everything more plasticky and a lot more in toned, and I wanted to oppose that, so I created these love handles, and how they could also be very beautiful. I think they're beautiful. It's also, you know, very sexual, but I wanted to give that beauty and femininity to the piece. And so with the video in itself, I used a lot of different camera angles, so I'm letting you look at the piece, and I also give the angles of, you know, the whole body, so that you know that it's intentionally worn on the head. But there's also like a camera angle that shows the salt pouring onto the camera, which is basically the salt pouring onto people. So I'm playing with people. I'm trying to let them in, but also make them back out.
And the piece was called
Mnemosyne.
Mnemosyne.
That's how you say that. Mnemosyne.
Okay. And we looked that up actually, and it's the goddess personification of memory. We kind of thought maybe that's why it was incorporated or put on the head. Does that kind of go with it, or?
Yeah, it definitely goes with it. I mean, when you look at salt, I mean, just the material itself, like it could be interpreted as like tears, as emotion. And also, you know, I researched, and that's what I do with a lot of my work. Like, I'm always researching the materials to see where they come from and how they were initially used. And I found out that they were used to dominate animals, and I thought that was really interesting because, and also for power reasons too. And so, when I researched the material, I was thinking like, okay, so this is the perfect thing, like dominating. How do we dominate our own body? So if I put it on my head, and this idea of dominant ideals, of dominating each other or oneself, so it had to be placed in the head because it starts all with the mind, and you believe these things. And so for me, it was really important that it was in the head, and also it was also the first performance that I ever did within a committee, not a live performance, but in front of my professors. And it is a very intimate story, this idea of like letting go and bringing all these things back in. And so it was very important for me to cover myself up and be able to take another persona, so that I can detach myself from the work emotionally.
So it's salt that's in there?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about it, and we were thinking it might have been like sugar, since they look so breast-like, you know, breast milk, things like that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they're supposed to mimic love handles or breasts, or both.
I was going for love handles, but I know a lot of people were like, that looks like breasts. and really, you know, these I call them plugs. They're not, you know, people are like, those are the nipples, and I'm like, they're plugs. They're like ear plugs, actually. Like when you pull these things out, they're casted from ear plugs. And you know, I'm looking at packaging. I'm looking at like toothpaste, and I'm looking at the nipple that creates that toothpaste. I wasn't really even looking at the breast as a model. I was really looking at how we package things and putting that on there, and this idea of the ear and turning and like not listening to the outside. So I think that that's also a big metaphor, but it really takes the object in itself to actually look at it and find those visual clues.
Yeah, it's interesting how we did interpret it as that, you know, where I'm like, okay, the plugs are the nipples, what's pouring out is the breast milk, it's sugar, it's sweet, you know, so it's interesting how you can just, I mean, it depends on the viewer, you know, you can take it in different ways, and you know, here we come to find out that it's something different than what we thought, but contemporary art, I guess, right? Like it needs to be explained, maybe to really get it, or do you think that?
No,
it's just
I
kind of-
think
Leanne made that a big thing throughout the class, that contemporary art is something that needs to be explained, and I'm like,
Yeah, she just.
I don't
No,
know if I
I
agree
don't
with
think
that.
so. No, I think a lot of contemporary artists have a big sense of humor, and so we are
Yeah.
playing with all these symbols in order to captivate, make the audience question what you're actually looking at.
Mhm.
So I mean, for instance, I didn't take like the sample of the little breast. Like it's just the tube of the pantyhose, and the weight is the one that brings it down.
Mhm.
And so it's not even like I wasn't like literally trying to create these breast shapes. It's just, you know, the placement also of these plugs. And so these things, I mean, really you can look at it as abstract, or you could look at it from a non-abstractive perspective, but it is basically abstracted a lot. And so, but it's funny because everybody's going to take different.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoy that because I enjoy people coming up to me and telling me like I read your work in a totally different way, and to me that's refreshing because it creates a more of an objective perspective where a lot of different opinions can come into the work. You know, work that I feel like the work that is most successful is the one that it can be open to all these different interpretation, whereas work that isn't as interesting just pins one thing, one subject down, and I think that doesn't give, you know, it's like a poem. A poem, you can read it over and over and analyze it and take it apart and then put it back together, and every single time it can have a different meaning, and that's like timelessness. That's like a timeless piece.